All right, here we go. What's up, YouTube? I'm back again for another video. Today on it, we're gonna talk about the I Show Speed and his exploration of Africa, which I think is a good thing. I mean, he ain't the only one have done it before, but in a popularity exploration, you know, basically just going through the towns step by step. Based on his popularity, he's probably more exposed, and he's from the American continent. So, you know, in America, we kind of belittle Africa a lot. There's a lot of people, but even in the Caribbean, you know what I mean? Even many countries, actually, let me just say that. For individuals who travel there, you know, they don't have a problem with it because they visit the country, the continent, and they see the island, the towns, the cities, the structures and the monuments that they have there. They see the paved roads and all that good stuff. Hotels, fancy restaurants, clubs, bars, all of these bus stations, train stations, fancy cars. Me, myself, I am not surprised. I already did my research on Africa a very long time ago. I would say years ago, like early 2000s, you know, because I was curious, to know what Africa was like. Because, the story is that people over there live in the bush or they don't have good houses and so forth, so forth. I mean, if you go to the Caribbean islands, not just the Caribbean islands, but many islands you go to, a lot of those places are set up in a low, I wouldn't say low, I wouldn't say low, but I would say they have more of a lower development, not in a like a low poverty type of lifestyle, but a more simpler development. Let me say that. That's a better word to use. So I don't see the big deal. I mean, I wouldn't say I don't see the big deal. The the way how they're hyping it though is the part that's bothering me. The unsurprising expectation of what Africa looked like. Like, I mean, come on, think about it. Do you guys actually? Yes, there's certain places in Africa that might still have some low cost of living, just like America. If you think of America, it's the same process. You're gonna have towns that's doing pretty good. You're gonna have locations that look very high class, high standard, high performance. But then you're gonna have other areas that's just, like what we call the ghetto. You know, if you've seen some of these neighborhoods, like how Camden had looked a couple years ago. I mean, Camden is looking a lot better now. Kensington and Philly, how Trenton used to look back in the day. Um, a lot of these places have changed over time, but that look very run down, very ghetto, very poor, trashy looking places. You know what I'm saying? So when you go to Africa and you see some of these places, that's more low fortunate type of living. It's pretty not. That's all over the place. Even China have these places. You go to Philippines, Thailand. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these people, I think if I remember, I think they call it Gonggong or wherever the name is. I think it's the Philippines. I think where they call it the slums. The poor area, and these people live in like all over water, with trash and filth and stuff like that. I mean, it's everywhere. So for us to in America, not just America, but every other places, to assume that Africa is just like certain parts of Africa, is just straight dirt, or majority of it is just straight dirt, and they're just living in the bushes and They don't have big buildings and futuristic location. You know what I'm saying? It's they don't have. Matter of fact, I would say Africa have more skills, more, how should I say, artistic, not in the sick, not in the disability way, but autistic, skill mental people than anywhere in the world. Because a lot of things I've seen that these people have done compared to the education that we have here, they have done it in the most simplest ways, just by them coming up with these creative ways to get things done in their own way. So you got to give them credit for that. Like you got to give them a lot. Like I've seen dudes build planes, like prototypes basically, build engines, do creative things to build carts, go karts, mimication of four-wheel cars and stuff like that. There's one guy, he just invented the cordless TV. You know what I'm saying? You got the guy who also did the oil, where he can break plastic down to oil. Not the one in America. There's the guy in Africa did it before he did it, right? Um, there's also uh, when the guy who created the fan, to how they come up with their own way of creating the AC and to keep themselves cool and all these different things. They did a lot of these things off of just creative ideas. You know what I'm saying? If you want to say being bored and smart at the same time. So I don't see why this is such a big. It's not a surprise to me. It's not. I know this already. I've been done my research a long time ago when it was actually functioning, when it was actually building up. Now, the thing I want to say is this. Prior to the colonization, yes, Africa had their own civilization. They had their own building monuments. What the part that confused, I think, a lot of people undermine Africa is that, yes, every village or every tribal town wasn't fully developed to a certain degree, and still to this day, you can see some tribes are still maintaining their old ways. But it doesn't mean that the masses of Africa is the same way. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean they all do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean they didn't have civil towns and they didn't have to create uh, steel wells and you know building concrete buildings and you know whatever it is that we do today that they didn't kind of bring into fruition for themselves. Now the problem is that a lot of those things got pushed back, destroyed, dismantled, boom boom bam. The colonizer came in and then started recreating and reinvesting their own benefits, benefiting from the slave labor of the people, right? And in the context of doing that, they kind of also build up the country in their point of view, or invest. Let me use invest into the country in their point of view, but with not by the Africans fully controlling it, but by the Africans working for them. So, I can personally say, based on my understanding, I would say a good percentage of Africa still to this day in all the countries except for Benin, it's pretty much there's like black businesses. I'm not saying there's not. I'm not saying there's not black businesses, but the major corporate businesses are run by Caucasians or owned by them, or it's by some black guy who support that side of the life, and they have a lot of corruption as well. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, they have a lot of corruption as well. So I don't, you know, I don't see why. Like I said, for me personally, I don't get the hype about it or the surprise about it. What I'll do like about what he's doing is that the position he's taking is noble and it's actually bold and it's actually how should I say sightful based on what he's doing for other people to see the country for what it is. Because there's people in Africa that's like there's a I don't remember his name. You know, I'm bad with names. I'm very bad with names. So there's another guy from Nigeria. I think he travels throughout Africa, and he goes to all the African countries, and you know, basically um, narrate them, give a little history, expose them to the world. You know what I'm saying? He does this all. He's very popular doing this, but even though he's from Africa, he's also so restricted from some countries, which he have been before, and then they have to restrict him from some of the same countries that he has visited because he's exposing the country to the world. So it's almost like there's a ban for Africa to be exposed. There's a ban for people to want to come there as a tourism or to come live there or to see that Africa is a developing place. Because really and truly, what that like the way how I see it is this. Like I said, I wish I could remember his name, but it's a short black guy from Africa. Most I know he's like from I think he's from Nigeria. I think short black bald guy. He traveled all over Africa. But like I said, he have had experiences, and I've followed him quite a bit. Where he have had experiences where certain countries had banned him or stopped him or limit his exposure of the country to the world. Because what he does is he go and he talks about, what's so special about this specific place, or show people that Africa is not as simple or far back as people think. It's actually they have sky, they have tall sky buildings, they have big jumbo jets, they have super big roads, they have a lot of restaurants, they have malls, they have good schools, they have buildings with elevators and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's they have super good hotels, right? Modernized buildings too. You know what I'm saying? And yes, they have the low grade locations as well. But what he used to do that. I mean, he still does. But what I'm saying is they did block him at certain cases too in Africa. This is just Africa alone, okay? There's some countries that he go to in Africa, and not just in Africa, but also the African islands or the islands around Africa, that he cannot, or they limit his exposure to these countries. And I'm basically repeating the situation because I want people to understand, like, I'm not saying this out of my mouth, I'm saying this based on what he have exposed over the internet on his channel. I wish I could remember I can't remember his name, man, but, I think, but he have done a lot of traveling through Africa itself, the continent itself. And there have been some restrictions throughout his exposure to a lot of things. And he cried out, fully to the people like, why am I limited to travel in Africa when I am also from Africa? But if I'm trying to express that Africa is a great place to people to come and visit, why is there a problem for me to do that? Or why is this limit for me, well, for him to expose these places and show people that Africa is not what they think it is. It's not as belittled as, yeah, for people to fly out of Africa, which is pretty normal because people from America fly out and go other places. Because people come to America, it doesn't mean people don't leave America. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe you could say there's more people coming to America than the people that leave. That's true. but it doesn't mean that they still don't leave. You know what I'm saying? So in Africa, yes, it's a big piece of land. It's a big land, and it's a lot of people, different. I think it's like what, 50 over 50 countries or something like that, and they speak hundreds of languages. I think it's over close to 100 countries, something like that, if I remember correctly. And they speak a bunch of different languages, and they have a lot of trials and tribulations because they're dealing with a lot of colonialism. But at the same time, the structures or the development of the country is not how should I say degrading as we think it is. So, like I said, I'm repeating myself, but like I said, the country is not disappointing to help people. I would love to visit myself. I just, trying to get myself final. Once I get myself finalized and be able to save enough money to be able to travel back and forth or whatever, I would love to visit. I would love to take a week and see what it is like there. Matter of fact, if I have enough money, I'd like to visit all the countries in Africa. You know what I'm saying? And explore the place. But like I said, man, I just don't get the hype though. I just don't get the hype. I just don't know why people. Well, you know what? Let me take that back. I do get it. I do. We have been so lost that to understand that the people or the continent of the people relate to us. Yes, we may not know the bloodline. Yes, we may not be able to identify our bloodline, but they look like us. The continent is the majority of us. Just like how the majority of Asian people is in Asia, so Asian people have an identification of a location, right? So just like African people or dark or brown people, skin people have identification, or it should just say melanin, dark melanin people have a location identification in terms of landmass, right? So what I'm saying is for us to be so disappointed that that our country should be developed, it is disappointing. And for it to be in 2026 and we think this way, it's crazy. That's diabolical, actually. It is diabolical to think that because Africans come to America, even in the Caribbean, to think because some people come to the Caribbean, it doesn't mean the Caribbean is complete. I mean, the country is completely run down or they're desperate for help. It could be just that people just see different opportunities. It could be that the population is different. It could be that, circumstances that makes you want to leave. It doesn't mean that, or you just want to leave. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that the country is liable to take care of people, or it's not beautiful, or it's not, it doesn't have the affordable needs for people to sustain themselves. Matter of fact, did everybody people think that maybe it's just the people is the problem, that or they just don't know how to? Maybe there's limits to them using the resources. Maybe there's restriction, or maybe there's pushback. Maybe there's some kind of hold on the things that they want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like people got to think like that. People got to pay attention to like what is it that's stopping the Africans from I wouldn't say take over, but from developing more faster than how fast they is. And then again, like people said, they don't have to leave the continent to go anywhere. You see what I'm saying? They don't have to. They don't have to. They don't have to export anything. The oil from the Middle East, because the Middle East is right there, and this is basically part of Africa, right? I mean, well, back in the day, but it's just a little water line, the River Nile. That is, and then again, not to mention they could build a bridge, if they want to, but not to mention they can cross up there by Egypt, right? Which means a lot of traffic gonna be bounded to Egypt. So I'm assuming they're gonna build a bridge at some point. But the thing is, Africa could be more developed than what it is because they don't need to export. You know what I'm saying? They could stay right where they are and collect all the materials they need And if they do need materials outside of Africa, it shouldn't be much of a hassle because they're basically exporting everything. But let's just say if they do, if they, let's just say if they do not need to export or basically import to build majority of the things that they're trying to do. And I think Africa should the how should I say when I say out, because if you notice I'm using the word Africa, I'm not speaking for Pacific countries. I'm saying the whole continent. I'm talking about the whole continent. I'm putting the people in one bracket. So Africa, the people in Africa, if they even if they have different like tribal behavior, it should be one country. You know what I'm saying? They could keep their different acts like language and stuff. Cause like in the U.S., it's different states, but each state have its own unique style, its own unique dialect, its own unique food design, its own unique animal symbol. You know what I'm saying? The own unique dance style, the own representation for that specific state. So Africa can do the same thing. Make a one big continent, have one state, and they could have different names or different ideology for those states, but the continent is one landmass, is one country, Africa. You know what I'm saying? So matter of fact, they probably should change the name if that's the case. But the thing is, back again, the surprising thing about Aisho speaking and him visiting Africa and exploring I think it's about 5 or 6 countries he's been to, maybe 7 now. So, I mean, yeah, 7 different countries he's been to now. I am not surprised for what he's experienced or what he's seen. Because remember, he went to many other countries before then, and the people treat him pretty much the same. They're excited, they surround him, they make things, so they give him art, they give him gifts, same thing. You know what I'm saying? So for him to go to South Africa, and people been following this guy way before he even got there, not to mention, no, I'm side noting, not to mention, Africans love to see when one of their people come back home. As much as they say that African people don't like American people, you can see thousands and thousands and tons of people as he moves through the country. People are lining up. Yeah, I'm not saying that he might not have a few haters, but people are lining up. You know what I'm saying? They're lining up. So we need to get off of that judgment mentality thing. We need to stop thinking so belittle of our own people. Like I said, it doesn't surprise me of how Americans or people throughout the world, especially America Pacific, because that's where the surprise at. But the Caribbean as well, for us to be like, think of Africa to be so little, and it's actually disappointing for people to be surprised versus, oh wow, like I know the country had to be developed. Ain't no way. These people got, they bring music, they bring dance styles. I never really understand, like, why is it in America they expose so many good things, right? China does the same thing. But when it comes to Africa, it's limited. There's limited things that you can expose or share with the world, that comes from Africa. No, like, y'all have to ask those questions. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, when Homeboy he lives in Africa. He travels throughout Africa, and he's not the only one. There's a couple of females, a couple of the dudes and females have done the same thing he have done. But for him, not him specifically, but I know for him, I've heard him speak out loud that there's limitations to places that he can go, and places that he have been before reject him exposing or showing the things that he's seen to the world. It's almost like they don't want African people to know that, or they don't want people to know that Africa have a beautiful place. They have a developing place. Like it's opened the doors for people to come and live there as if they live in America or they live in China or wherever they live in the same modern type lifestyle. It's like they don't want people to see that. You know what I mean? It's like the perception of Africa is like the poorest place on the planet, and that's what they want us to know. But that's not what it is. Africa is a rich place. And they have developing countries. They have very good developing countries. But anyway, with that said, I just wanted to share that note. You know what I mean? If anybody liked what I said, check it out, subscribe, give me, like the page. Africa is a beautiful place, man. Let's stop belittling the place that we come from because we don't see a lot of it. It doesn't mean it's not doing something. Matter of fact, before you start judging, you don't have to go there to see the place. That's the funny part. You could talk to the people that came from there. They can show you pictures. They can show you videos. You can do your own research and see that the country is developed. With that said, peace.